let's look at how the city and the country are voting and what the trends might be there. For more on this, I'm joined by Redbridge Group Director Simon Welsh. Simon, we've just had an election. We've got a pretty good idea about how city and country people vote and their different priorities. But you've already got some groups out in the field. What feedback are you getting today?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, we've been out in the field in regional Australia, and it's reminded me of something that we've been watching for quite a while now that I thought was sort of worth talking about in the context of the whole future of the coalition discussion at the moment, which is just how much those Gen Z, even millennial voters in the regional areas sound and think like their sort of generational peers in the cities. Like the attitudinal sort of dispositions they have around climate, around gender, around policy issues like housing and taxation and these sorts of things are very, very similar to what we see in the suburbs of Melbourne, the suburbs of Sydney or the suburbs of Brisbane. It's sort of the generation, I think, is actually more important than geography in terms of sort of shaping people's, as I say, sort of political predispositions and attitudes and these sorts of things. And I think that's really interesting and it's important, as I say, in the context of this coalition discussion. Not for a second suggesting that the Nationals are about to start losing seats because of this sort of attitudinal sort of predisposition, but I think it kind of limits or it's part of a series of factors that put a limit on the Nationals' ambitions. The seats that the Nationals can actually win. So we know. And it seems quite obvious to say that the Nationals tend to do well in seats that are older and seats that are getting older. So that is characteristic of a lot of regional Australia, just broadly because of population migration, particularly young people leaving, those sorts of things. So if you start looking at, okay, well, where are those seats that are getting older? But then you've got to put another factor on it as well, which is proximity to capital cities. So if you've got big regional centres that are close enough to the capital cities that you see like the tree change phenomenon, or you see decentralisation of public services. So you see country centres with big public service populations, particularly sort of Gen X service populations. That's really difficult territory for the Nationals. And we saw in this latest election, see the Bendigo, big Gen X public service population. It's older, it's getting older, so it's got that feature, but it's still got sort of 30-odd% of millennial Gen Z voters in it. And the Nats threw a lot of resources at it. They ran an excellent campaign, and they still lost it. They still lost it because these young because these young voters, there was just enough of these young voters and these sort of Gen X progressive leaning, probably not so much tree changes in Bendigo, but more that sort of public service kind of decentralised story. So you start to ask yourself then, okay, well, where are the opportunities? If the Nats are looking to grow their sort of electoral presence, where are the opportunities? And this is where I think the interesting thing comes in is the sort of seats that meet that profile are far more likely to be blue than red. They are likely to be Liberal-held seats rather than Labor-held seats. There's a couple of Labor-held seats that I'm sure the Nats would have their eyes on. But if you're looking to really expand your sort of political footprint, it means taking on the Liberals in some of those seats. And I say, this, I think, is the interesting sort of discussion in the context of what's happening with the coalition at the moment.
Well, they don't really run that many three-way contests, and now that they are back together, I mean, that doesn't really bode well for a prospect of expanding the seats they need to win to be parties of government. But, I mean, Bendigo is a case in point, right? Are you saying that it's going to get harder at the next election if more younger people move into those kind of outer regional seats?
Yeah, if they do. And that's the if, because we know some of these seats are actually getting older. So you're seeing young people move out of those areas for economic opportunities, but for all the reasons that make country seats so volatile.
I mean, I know they're not one homogenous group, but what are younger people in the bush, who are they voting for? Because they're still voting for the Nationals in a big way, you'd have to think, but who are the alternatives? Are there some country independents or is it Labor?
It's less so Labor. It's very much a story about independence and even minor parties like the Greens and these sorts of things as well. So these sort of younger progressive voters are finding a way to express their vote, but it's not necessarily landing on Labor. Absolutely, it's very much those independent kind of stories.
Always fascinating, Simon. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.